"Excuse me, would you teach me the violin for just $1 a day?" One day, a young girl suddenly appeared at my quietly run violin school in the countryside. Your right arm. What happened? I couldn't find words, stunned. Her right arm was, in fact, a prosthetic. Don't worry about the money. Feel free to come anytime you want. After a moment's hesitation, I answered her that way. Little did I know that soon after, my voicemail would be flooded with 100 messages for my violin class. My name is Polly. I run a violin school here in this small countryside town. The name of my school is Arpeggio Violin School. I don't have many students, but even so, I teach in this little place, quietly, day by day. Now, being away from the noise of the city, I'd like to say that this tranquility feels comforting, but to be honest, there's a part of each day that feels somewhat empty. My life wasn't supposed to turn out like this, I think to myself, as I polish my violin. Actually, I was somewhat known as a violinist some years ago. In my teens, I was known for sweeping competitions, handling even the toughest pieces with precision, and always scoring high marks. Up until my early 20s, my violin playing was considered machine-like perfection, and for a while, that was enough to earn me recognition. But the professional world isn't forgiving. It soon became clear that merely playing with precision wasn't valued as much, and I started to feel pressure to add expression to my music. That's when I stopped. No, more accurately, I was forced to stop. What did expression mean to me? What did my own unique sound on the violin even look like? I searched, desperate to find answers, but I came up empty. My colleagues discovered their own voices, captivating audiences with their unique styles, one after another. But me, I felt as though my feet were glued to the ground, unable to move forward. Eventually, performing became a burden. The violin, which I once played with all my heart, suddenly started to feel like a heavy weight on my shoulders. And so I quit being a violinist. I moved back to my hometown, to a place where nobody knew me, and opened a violin school. That was the best decision I could make at the time. Even so, I guess there was nothing else I could really do. I chuckled to myself, a little bitterly, at how I couldn't entirely step away from the violin. I named my school Arpeggio Violin School, inspired by the technique I specialized in. An arpeggio is about carefully stacking each note, one at a time. It was symbolic of my violin style. Precise, steady, and meticulous. Little did I realize that this very precision would one day become my own curse. All right, maybe it's time to wrap it up for today. With the violin finally polished, I begin closing up the school for the day. My current number of students barely reaches a handful. If I put my name and former title as a professional violinist on a sign, it would probably draw more students. But somehow, I can't shake the feeling that doing so would only drag me back into that past. Teaching quietly, without a name. That's the path I've chosen now. It was one of those ordinary days. A day that was supposed to end without anything unusual. Well, time to head home. As I was packing up in the evening, suddenly there was a knock on the classroom door. Who could that be? I turned towards the door and stood up. There were hardly any students around, and there wasn't supposed to be any more appointments today. In this quiet small town, an unexpected visitor was rare. "Hello, who's there?" Curiously, I opened the door to find a young girl standing there. Is this Arpeggio Violin School?" "Yes, but who are you?" Her quiet voice made me a bit surprised. From her school uniform, I could tell she was a local middle school student, but there was something else that caught my attention even more. "Your right arm. What happened?" When I asked, she looked down, almost hesitant. touching her right arm with her other hand as if to protect it. Yes, this is a prosthetic. I lost my arm due to illness, but I didn't want to give up the violin I've played since I was little. With a trembling voice, she bowed her head deeply towards me. Could you teach me violin for $1 a day? What? $1? I blurted out without thinking. She slowly raised her head, her eyes looking down apologetically. I'm sorry, I want to practice every day, but with my allowance, that's all I can afford. I was at a loss for words. Playing the violin with a prosthetic isn't easy. It would be challenging for her, and for me as her teacher as well. Moreover, for someone her age, it's usual to come with a parent when starting violin lessons. Why was she alone, trying to pay for her lessons with her own allowance? Many questions crossed my mind. So, it's no good, right? She looked down, almost on the verge of tears. Seeing her expression tugged at something deep inside me. Well, let me think. I considered it. To be honest, I had plenty of time, and I still had some savings from my days as a professional. And more than anything, I felt a desire to help her. I made up my mind and turned to her. My name is Polly, the instructor here. What's your name? You don't need to pay. Come whenever you like. After a moment of silence, a smile spread across her face. Thank you so much. My name is Mariah. Thank you, Polly. Her smile warmed something deep in my heart. It was a feeling I had forgotten for a long time. Surely, she carried some complex circumstances with her, but by reaching out to her, maybe I could change too. That's what I felt from this one-armed girl standing before me. The next day, I began teaching Mariah the violin. However, I had never taught someone with a prosthetic arm before, and honestly, I was a bit unsure where to begin. Well, what should we start with? As I hesitated, Mariah quietly took her violin out of its case. There was no hesitation in her movements, and the way she touched the strings was assured. You're good with the violin, aren't you? Oh, yeah, you used to play it since you were little, right? Yes, but it's my first time touching a violin since I got this prosthetic. Mariah lowered her voice as she said this. A trace of nervousness was evident in her words. I'll try playing a bit. Mariah looked down at her prosthetic hand fitted with the bow. However, her movements were awkward, and each time she touched the strings, the pressure would slightly ease, causing the sound to break. Of course, it wasn't her fault. It seemed her prosthetic wasn't fully accustomed to the delicate actions required yet. This is harder than I thought. Mariah muttered apologetically. Her eyes were serious, yet a hint of frustration at her limited hand control was visible on her face. Don't push yourself. Let's start by getting you comfortable with the prosthetic first. I thought for a moment, then pulled out my cell phone. Hold on a second. I'll call for an assistant. What, an assistant? Mariah looked up at me, surprised. Yay, someone special to help you play the violin more easily. I gave a slight grin, trying to sound light-hearted, and called a certain someone. Barely a few minutes after I hung up, a cheerful knock sounded at the classroom door. Polly, I'm here. Can I come in? Come on in, I answered, and my mom, Lily, stepped into the classroom. Mom, sorry for the sudden ask, but actually, oh, Mariah. Before I could explain, Mom raised her voice in surprise as she spotted Mariah. Oh, it's the nurse lady. Mariah's eyes widened in surprise too. It seemed the two of them already knew each other. Mom, you know her? Yes, I know her well. I helped out during her rehab sessions at the hospital. But Mariah, what are you doing here? Do your parents know? Well, at Mom's questioning, Mariah lowered her head, looking a bit uncomfortable. I see. Mom gave a slight shrug. then turned back to me. Polly, care to explain? I'm teaching her on my own. And of course, I'm not charging her. Honestly, you never change. Mom let out a sigh of exasperation, and I pleaded with her for just a bit more support. Please, help Mariah until she can play the violin again. I'll cover her rehab costs. Oh fine, but it's the violin. Mom looked at Mariah with eyes that seemed to hold some deeper understanding. Maybe she knew more about her situation than I did. Just as I thought that, Mariah spoke in a small voice. Lily, I am sorry. It's all right, Mariah. It's okay. I won't tell your parents. Mom smiled gently and wrapped her arms around Mariah's small shoulders. Thank you, Lily. As Mariah slowly raised her face, her expression seemed slightly softened. Then, Lily turned to me with a slightly awkward smile. Come on, Polly. Stop spacing out and get out of the room, please. I need to check how Mariah's prosthetic arm is working, and she needs help taking off her jacket. Honestly, you've got no sense of discretion, just like Dad. Now, come on, hurry up. All right, got it. With Lily urging me out, I left the room. I can never seem to win with her. Mom, thank you. I muttered softly toward the door. Some time passed after that, and Mariah gradually started getting the hang of using her prosthetic arm. Thanks to Lily's support, she was able to move with a decent amount of freedom, even with her prosthetic, so I decided to resume her full violin lessons. All right, Mariah, let's work on this phrase today. With that, I positioned my violin and began demonstrating, playing carefully to show her the correct tone. This was my specialty. Setting aside expressive flair, when it comes to technique alone, I'm confident no one can surpass me. That's it for now. Give it a try. Okay. Mariah's response was as lively and full of enthusiasm as always. She took her position, bow ready to touch the strings, just as the classroom phone rang unexpectedly. Sorry, Mariah. Hold on a sec. It was late afternoon. Unusual for this hour, I thought as I answered. Hello, Arpeggio Violin Studio here. Oh, Polly. I'm sorry to bother you, but I have an urgent request. The call was from a nearby student's family. Apparently, their violin had broken, and they were hoping I could fix it. I'm sorry, I have a gig tonight at a friend's place, and I really wanted to use this particular violin. Right now. I hesitated for a moment. We were just getting to the important part of Mariah's lesson. But these repair jobs help cover income from the few students I have. I weighed my options in a matter of seconds. Polly. Mariah stepped closer, noticing my hesitation, and whispered to me, Go ahead and take care of the repair. But it's fine. I'll practice on my own. For a moment, I felt unsure, but her earnest gaze made my shoulders relax. Thank you, Mariah. I appreciate it. I returned her smile, then told the student on the line, I'll head over right away, and hung up the phone. Mariah, I'll be late, so after you're done practicing on your own, feel free to head home. I'll leave the key here, so just lock up and put it in the mailbox outside. All right, got it, Polly. See you later. Mariah smiled and waved me off. Handing her the key, I hurried out to the repair job. The following day, something unexpected happened. I arrived at the studio as usual, opened the door, and noticed the voicemail light on the phone was blinking persistently. What's this? Checking my phone, I found over 100 messages waiting for me. No way. Could it be? With hesitation, I started playing through the messages. Someone who passed by the classroom yesterday had heard Mariah's violin playing, filmed it, and posted it on social media. That video had quickly gone viral, and now renowned musicians and record companies were reaching out, hoping to meet the person behind the violin. This can't be happening, right? In a rush, I opened my mobile app and found the video. I was anxious, worried that Mariah's image as a prosthetic armed violinist had become sensationalized in an uncomfortable way. But to my relief, the video only showed the arpeggio violin school sign and Mariah's music echoing from inside the classroom. Feeling a little more at ease, I found myself struck by her performance. Mariah had not only perfectly mirrored the piece I had once shown her, but she had boldly added her own unique flourishes to it. It wasn't just accuracy. Her music held a gripping, powerful expression that captivated the listener. Is this her potential? I muttered in awe. What I had once played as a simple technical exercise, Mariah had made her own, transforming it into something rich with emotion, the expressive power I had chased in my own past. This was it. I felt it. Wow, this is unbelievable. Lost in this shock, I was startled when the door opened and Mariah walked in. Polly, is something wrong? Unaware of anything, she tilted her head. Curious. Mariah, you won't believe this. Your performance has gone viral on social media, and now musicians and record labels are dying to meet you. Excitedly, I showed her the video as I spoke. Mariah's eyes widened, and she slowly focused on the screen. Amazing. So many people are listening to my music. Her eyes shone with disbelief, and soon they began to well up. Mariah, you're incredible. Even I was blown away by your playing. Thank you. Voice shaking, she smiled warmly. That smile made my chest feel tight, and I was left in awe of her undeniable talent. How had she managed to replicate that performance so perfectly? Simple practice didn't seem enough to explain it. Mariah, tell me, how did you? Polly, Mariah hesitated, lowering her gaze a bit before speaking slowly. The truth is, my parents were musicians in an orchestra. That explains it. So you've been around the violin since you were little? Yes, I don't even remember the first time I touched a violin. It feels like I've always been playing. But, Mariah's voice trembled faintly. After I lost my right hand, my parents gave up on me. They told me it was impossible, that I should stop. Since then, they've focused only on my younger sister. Her words hit me deeply. Beyond the physical pain of losing an arm, she had carried the anguish of feeling abandoned by her parents. I see, so you have a younger sister. I replied gently. I wanted to ease her pain, even just a little, but I didn't know what to say. Yes, my name is Tiana. My parents, they only care about her now. I'm sure they don't even notice whether I'm there or not. Her face contorted, and large tears began to spill from her eyes. Mariah, I felt a surge of anger. Clenching my fists tightly, this young girl had come all the way here with a desperate desire to play the violin again. Yet I hadn't realized the weight of her feelings until now. Mariah, what do you want to do in the future? What's your dream? I asked in a serious tone. Even now, I felt the desire to understand Mariah more deeply. Mariah lifted her face, pressing her lips together in slight hesitation. But the next moment, a strong light sparked in her eyes. My right arm is a prosthetic, so the road ahead might be tough, but I still want to become a violinist. I caught my breath at her words. Mariah hadn't lost sight of her dream. A violinist, yes. Actually, I've known about you, Polly, for quite a while. It was listening to your performances back when you were a pro that inspired me to want to become a violinist. My performance? I asked in surprise. Mariah gave a shy nod. Yes, the first time I heard you play, I was so moved, thinking, how could someone produce such clear, straight notes? From that moment, I dreamed of one day standing on the same stage as you, and that dream has kept me going through all my practice. Her eyes shone with pure admiration and determination. Seeing that, I realized I'd been undervaluing myself for so long. A warmth stirred in my chest. I'd unknowingly impacted her life in such a profound way. All right, I understand. I'll make sure you become a violinist. The lessons may be intense, but will you stay with me through it? When I said that, Mariah nodded vigorously, her eyes glistening with tears. Of course, thank you, Polly. A tear traced down Mariah's cheek, catching the light. In that moment, I made up my mind as well. I resolved to guide Mariah with all I had, help her become a professional violinist. Media and record companies had reached out, but Mariah preferred to keep things on hold for now. She said she was happy but felt that becoming famous in that way wasn't quite right. Moved by her dedication, I made her a suggestion. Mariah, how about entering a competition? A competition? Yes, I believe it'll be a place where you can truly test your abilities. The path will be challenging, but I'll support you all the way. What do you think? I looked into Mariah's eyes as I asked. After a moment of hesitation, Mariah's gaze steadied, and she gave a firm nod. Polly, I'd like to give it a try. Good answer. Let's start planning right away. There were 3 months until the competition. Straighten your posture more. Look, your left hand is starting to waver. Yes, I poured all the skills and precision techniques I'd developed over the years into teaching Mariah. The way she shifted positions, used the bow in her right hand, and maintained precise notes, I continued to teach her each of the skills essential for a professional. Polly, how is it? Much better. All right, let's move on to the next phrase. Mariah absorbed it all with astonishing speed. Despite her prosthetic arm, it was evident that her performance improved every day. But what surprised me more was the emotion in she's playing. Even as her technique improved, she never limited her performance to mere skill. Her violin always seemed to be played purely from the heart. I see now that's what I had forgotten. I recalled my past self. There was a time when I, too, simply enjoyed playing the violin. But somewhere along the way, I had lost that feeling. Focusing only on meeting expectations and receiving recognition as a professional, the sheer joy had faded. Watching Mariah, I couldn't help but remember that version of myself. She played just to enjoy the music, to express herself. This is her greatest strength. I made up my mind. I would guide her without making her focus on scores or evaluations. I would help her protect that pure feeling, preserving her unique expression in music. Mariah, let's play a bit more freely this time, focusing less on technique and more on expressing what you feel. But Polly, it's all right. Mistakes don't matter. Just enjoy playing. Oh, okay. I'll give it a try. Mariah nodded with a smile, positioning her bow. The road to the competition was still long. Watching Mariah grow through this process, I felt like I could rediscover the joy of music for myself. That's how I felt. Then the day of the competition arrived. Despite the practice, Mariah couldn't hide her nerves on the way to the venue. Mariah, trust in everything you've done. It's all right, you can do this. Yes, thank you, Polly. But I'm still a little scared. In the back seat, Mariah held her violin case close. All right, let's play some of your favorite music. I smiled at her in the rearview mirror and turned on the music. When we arrived at the venue, I sensed the heavy atmosphere adding to Mariah's anxiety. Mariah's turn was last. The pressure while waiting only tightened her heart even more. It's all right. It's all right. Sitting on a bench, Mariah closed her eyes, whispering as if in prayer. I sat with her in the waiting room, frustrated by the time slipping by with nothing I could do. Just then, someone suddenly called out from behind, "Hey, what's a loser like you doing here?" At that voice, both Mariah and I turned around. There stood a girl who looked strikingly like Mariah. With a cold gaze, she looked down on Mariah and sneered mockingly. For a moment, I doubted my eyes. Mariah and this girl looked incredibly alike. "Mariah, who is she?" "Yes, she's my twin sister, Tiana," Mariah answered hesitantly. "Twins. I see, so you're twins." I looked at Tiana, a bit surprised, as I held my gaze on her. Noticing my stare, Tiana gave me a once-over, smirking from head to toe. "So that's it. Mariah, I thought you were acting strange lately, and it turns out you were learning violin from this guy." The way she said it carried an obvious undertone of mockery. Mariah tensed for a moment, then immediately positioned herself protectively in front of me, cautious of Tiana. "Tiana, stop it," she spoke in a low voice, but Tiana's cold gaze remained unchanging. "Good for you, Mariah. Getting taught by someone you've always admired." From Tiana's tone, I realized she must know about my past career as a professional musician. The glance she cast at me seemed to imply that although I failed, she wouldn't make the same mistake. "Hey, is Mariah joining too?" "That's impossible. You can't play the violin with a prosthetic arm, and no one would want to listen to it anyway." I held my breath for a moment. I could see Mariah's eyes tremble beside me. Just then, the dressing room door opened quietly. Someone was approaching us. Turning around, I saw a middle-aged couple with a refined demeanor standing there. "Mariah, what are you doing here?" "Yes, we told you to stay at home today, didn't we?" At their words, Mariah tensed, inhaling sharply. It seemed these two were Mariah's parents. Their voices were cold, as though they were denying Mariah's very existence. Mariah hesitated for a moment but met her dad, Sean's, gaze steadily, and spoke. "I'm here to participate in the competition." At those words, her parents' expressions shifted for a brief moment. "A competition? You? How could you waste your time like that?" Her mom, Nicola, looked down at Mariah with a mocking laugh. "You don't even have your arm anymore. Do you think you can still perform decently with only one arm?" Sean added, lashing out with a heartless remark. I saw the color drain from Mariah's face. Before I could speak to stop them, Nicola roughly grabbed Mariah's arm. "Ouch, that hurts. Hey, that's going too far. Stay out of this, outsider." "Listen, Mariah, we don't have any more expectations for you in this state. With Tiana here, there's no point in investing in you anymore." "Mariah, did you forget we're the judges today? Your performance isn't worth hearing," Sean and Nicola declared to their own daughter with cold detachment. Their words were like sharp blades stabbing into her heart. "Dad, Mom." But Mariah's eyes wavered, and I couldn't help but step forward protectively in front of her. "Please stop. Whether Mariah's performance holds any value or not will be seen today. Listen to her play before making a judgment. You of all people, as musicians, should understand this isn't something that can be settled with words alone." I turned to her parents with a firm tone. Nicole opened her mouth, looking displeased. You were in the past competition, right? It seems you two have a rather close bond, being such a pair of underdogs." She looked at me as if sizing me up. "Enough, leave it alone. The result is obvious anyway." He said this disinterestedly and left the room. "Yes, that's right. Tiana, we have a meeting with the other judges now, so we're going." "Yes, understood. See you later." She saw her parents off with a smile. Then, with that same smile, Tiana looked over at Mariah and me. "Prove it on stage if you're so hurt, Mariah. Though I'm sure I'll win anyway." At that moment, I noticed Mariah's shoulders trembling slightly. She tried to stay strong, but she was still hurt. "Mariah, how about we step outside for a bit? This small space only amplifies her anxiety." I called out to her and led her out of the waiting room. Once outside, we sat down in a quiet corner of the lobby, with the distant murmur of the crowd in the background. Mariah began to speak in a heavy tone, her gaze lowered. "Polly, Tiana's talent is the real thing. She's been trained by her parents at home for so long. I can't beat her like this." Mariah's voice trembled. I gazed at her face. I understand how she feels, doubting herself. The words of her parents, Tiana's talent, all the pressure must weigh heavily on her shoulders. "Mariah, Polly, watch it I do. I'm scared, so scared. I've worked hard, but was it enough? I knew I couldn't beat Tiana." "Mariah." At that moment, I called her name firmly again. "Polly." Mariah looked up in surprise. Seeing my reflection in her eyes reassured me a little. "Good, you're finally looking at me." I tried to smile as gently as I could to comfort her. "Mariah, we've come this far together, haven't we? I know everything you've put into this. I'm certain you can give a brilliant performance. If Tiana's talent is the real thing, so is yours. Polly, I believe in yourself. Trust in everything you've worked for, and you'll be fine." Little by little, her expression began to soften at my words. "Thank you, Polly." Her lips turned up just slightly, a smile returning to her face. "That's it, that's the spirit," I answered with a small smile to match hers. After spending a bit more time in the lobby, I escorted Mariah back to the waiting room and headed to my seat in the audience. Entering the hall, I could see the audience was already filling the seats, their eyes focused on the stage. As I sat down, Tiana's turn was just about to begin. The spotlight illuminated her, and she stood there, commanding the stage like it was hers alone. Her presence was flawless. As her bow touched the strings, the entire hall fell silent, and her performance began. Her performance was pure skill. Each note crisp, no wasted movement. Every calculated motion perfectly reflected in the music. The audience held their breath, captivated, the air heating up with the intensity of her performance. When she finished, thunderous applause erupted. "Incredible." As expected, I couldn't help but murmur. The level of technique, the flawless rhythm, and the sheer presence that commanded the stage. Tiana truly was, as Mariah had said, the real deal. Mariah. At the same time, I couldn't ignore the swirl of other emotions in my heart. Hearing Tiana's perfect performance, I couldn't help but worry if Mariah was feeling discouraged. She'll be okay, right? I hope she's able to believe in herself and enjoy this. I pictured Mariah's face in my mind. All I can do is one thing, just believe in Mariah. And finally, it was Mariah's turn to perform. She stepped onto the stage quietly from the side. I could feel the entire venue stirring. A girl with a prosthetic arm competing in a contest was an extraordinary sight. Mariah stood at the center of the stage, raising her violin. She looked resolute, completely different from the girl I once knew. A warm sensation rose from deep within my chest. She'll be fine. She won't hesitate anymore. The first note echoed through the hall, and the entire audience held its breath. Mariah's music sounded as though her very soul was pouring out through each note. Technically, there might still be some areas that needed work, but her performance had a strength that transcended that. As the music progressed, the murmurs in the audience faded, and everyone was captivated by her sound. "Mariah, I clenched my fist unconsciously. Right now, she was proving her strength. Her performance seemed to shout to the world, "Look at me." When the performance ended, silence fell over the hall. Then, a moment later, thunderous applause erupted. It was like a storm of claps and cheers, proof that every single person had been moved by her. I glanced at Mariah's parents in the judges' seats. They looked visibly shocked. The same parents who had earlier said it was pointless were now speechless. "Did you see that? This is her power." With a sense of satisfaction, I picked up the small bouquet I'd prepared and headed toward the stage. "Polly." Noticing me, Mariah called out with sparkling eyes. Holding her violin, she jumped off the stage. "Hey, that's dangerous." Surprised, I caught her securely. "Polly, I really did it, didn't I?" With her face buried in my chest, she asked, with a voice trembling with emotion. "Yay, you did great. You were amazing." I lightly stroked her head with a smile. As the applause continued, we stayed there for a moment, feeling each other's warmth. When the judging concluded, Mariah's name rang out as the champion in the hall, breaking the tension that had lingered. I clenched my fist. She really made it. On the stage, she was shining, holding the trophy. Her figure made me feel so proud. After the award ceremony ended, I was talking with Mariah in the lobby. "Polly, I really won, didn't I?" she murmured in disbelief, staring at the trophy in her hands. "Yay, you did. Your hard work paid off. Congratulations." Just as I smiled and said this, a familiar voice suddenly echoed from behind. "Mariah, I knew you'd make it." It was Sean. His face no longer wore the cold expression it had earlier. Instead, he had a proud smile. "That's our daughter." Then Nicola rushed over, placing her hand on Mariah's shoulder. They stood by her as if nothing had ever happened. Right after the victory, their attitude changed, and I felt a wave of frustration rise up inside me. "Dad, Mom," Mariah muttered, casting a suspicious glance at her parents, but they didn't seem to notice her expression at all. "Hey, how about teaming up with Tiana for a duo from now on?" "That's a great idea. Using the talent you two have as twins, you could reach a whole new stage. Let's start planning right away." "Mariah, let's go home." With a cheerful laugh, Sean reached out, trying to pull Mariah's arm. "Don't touch me," Mariah shot back, quickly pulling her arm away from Sean's grip. "What's wrong, Mariah?" "Yes, what's going on, Mariah?" Her parents gave forced smiles, but Mariah stared at them with unwavering, intense eyes. "You two are no longer my family." Her cold words echoed in the room. Her parents looked stunned, momentarily speechless. Unfazed, Mariah continued, "I won't be going to high school. From now on, I'm aiming to become a violinist with Polly." Her words struck a chord in me, too. This was the moment Mariah was truly choosing her own path. And here, I solidified my resolve as well. I'll be the one taking care of Mariah from now on. With those words, their faces twisted even more. "What are you saying? That's out of the question." Sean's face reddened as he shouted in anger. "That's right. Mariah is our daughter. There's no way we'd hand her over to you." Nicola joined in, voicing her opposition, but the mood around us had shifted. Onlookers nearby, spectators and event staff alike, started looking at her parents with cold, disapproving eyes. No one was taking their side. Meanwhile, Tiana, who had been hiding behind her parents, glared intensely at Mariah. She looked as if everything had been taken from her, with a deep resentment in her expression. "Mariah." Tiana opened her mouth as if to say something, but the words didn't come. Instead, her eyes shot daggers of emotion Mariah's way. "Tiana." Mariah met Tiana's gaze, her own steady and resolute. I appreciate everything you did for me up to this point, but after I finish middle school, I won't be coming back home. Thank you for everything up until now. After a long moment of gazing at her family, Mariah said this and bowed her head slightly. Let's go, Polly. Yay. She held my arm, and we walked away. No one said a word to us, but I could feel their stinging gaze on our backs. From there, Mariah and I began to enter one competition after another, steadily making a name for ourselves. Her performance kept improving, each note becoming sharper, more compelling, drawing the audience in like never before. As her hard work and talent began to take shape, each new award she won filled me with a deep, genuine joy. Yet, I couldn't help but notice something. Neither her parents nor Deanna showed up at any of her competitions anymore. Mariah, how's everything going back home lately? One day, I asked Mariah that question. Ever since that last competition, I hadn't seen her family around, and it had made me a little curious about what might be happening with them. My parents, well, they're still with the orchestra in some capacity, but I don't think they have the kind of influence they used to. Word about how they handled things with me, especially at that competition, seems to have spread, and, well, it's not exactly looked upon kindly. Mariah answered with a slight, wry smile. I see. And as for Deanna, she's completely put down her violin since then. What, Tiana? I was genuinely shocked. She had such incredible talent, yet she'd given up the violin entirely. Of course, Polly, this isn't because of you. Noticing my expression, Mariah quickly added a few words. This was the path she chose for herself. Her commitment only went that far, I guess. In her words, I could feel her growth. She was no longer the girl who had once been hurt and run away. She had grown so much stronger. Mariah, you've really become a strong person. I thought that sincerely. It's all thanks to you, Polly. She smiled shyly, and then, with a serious look, met my gaze. Polly, when I become a violinist, would you play alongside me? What? With me? Yes, that's my dream. Her eyes were filled with pure determination. In that moment, I felt a spark reignite within me, a desire to return to the professional world. I wanted to become a violinist again, to stand on the same stage as Mariah and perform with her. All right, it's a promise. I'll work hard too, so I can stand by her side once again. I took her prosthetic hand in mine. In that moment, a new dream was born between us. Not only would I watch over her growth, but I would also commit to walking this path with her. Years later, a young violinist with a prosthetic arm and a seasoned professional violinist would make a dazzling debut together on the world stage, but that's a story for another time.
My name is Emily, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married to my husband James for 2 years, and I've recently become a full-time homemaker after experiencing childbirth for the first time. Despite the struggles I face due to postpartum, the cuteness of my angelic son makes all my fatigue vanish. I can't help but gush. He has pure, adorable eyes. I bet he'll grow up to be a handsome boy. I'm already head over heels as a proud mother. However, despite my happiness, I have a problem. It's the presence of my mother-in-law Olivia, who visits us almost daily. My in-laws live about a 30-minute walk away. Olivia started coming over to support me postpartum, as a substitute for my busy James and my parents who live far away. Although her help would normally be appreciated, she does little to actually assist me. Instead, she just lounges on our sofa, watching her Korean soap opera DVDs that she brings along. She's more of a burden than a help, expecting me to serve her tea and fetch her tissues. She was the one who offered to help, But what is she here for exactly? I have tried telling her. I'm fine, you can go home. But I ended up getting an earful from James later that night. Undoubtedly, Olivia complained to him about being sent away. Even though I asked him to stop because our son was crying, James still snapped at me. He's a real mama's boy. I wish I could go back in time and punch my past self for not noticing this before we got married. He insists that I replicate his mother's recipes and even tries to make me dress more like her. No matter what I say, James worships his mother as if she's a goddess. No matter what I say, James worships his mother as if she's a goddess. We don't need to rely on your mom. It would help so much if you could just help me out a little. What? I work all day and I'm exhausted. Besides, I bet the baby is happier when you take care of him. Even when I'm talking to him, his eyes are always glued to the TV or his phone, showing no sign of being engaged in the conversation. Does he not care about our son? I'm just as exhausted as he is. With my eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, fatigue, and stress, I glare at him. Don't you dare complain to my dad. He's also busy and won't tolerate any unnecessary drama. For a moment, he turned his gaze to me, and James spoke as if to warn me. My father-in-law Ethan is nearing retirement, but still works a lot. I know he is busy. However, it would be a great comfort if he, who treats me like his daughter, could say something to James or Olivia. As I recall my conversations with James, Olivia's inconsiderate voice snaps me back to reality. Emily, the baby is fussing. Hurry up and soothe him down. It's the fun part of the drama now. She calls, not taking her eyes off the TV screen. I stop folding the laundry to attend to my son. As I pass the back of my engrossed Olivia, I stick my tongue out at her in my mind. Being worn out from children and sleep deprivation, her presence, doing nothing but hanging around, has become a major source of stress for me. However, it has nothing to do with my son. If James is not willing to help, then I am the only one left for my son. Well, I should get going, she finally says when the clock strikes 5. She quickly gets up from the sofa, uses my dressing table as if it's her own, fixes her makeup perfectly, and goes out into the Twilight City. Apparently, she is taking dance classes for her health and to maintain her beauty. From the time we met to discuss our wedding, she would brag saying, I used to be a model, so it's a habit for me to stay presentable. Thanks to that, people always think I'm younger than I actually am. It's a pain. She is 58, but admittedly, she does look younger than her age. That being said, if she's going to classes this late, she should just go during the day, instead of wasting time at my house. Grandma doesn't do anything, does she? As I spoke to my son in my arms, he was soundly asleep, gently breathing. An hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Ethan. Having been thoroughly tired of Olivia's behavior for days on end, I ignored James's advice and had been secretly discussing the matter with Ethan over the phone. Ethan wanted to see his grandson's face, so he had made time out of his busy schedule to come and visit us. Looking at my sleeping son, Ethan, whose expression was softer than James's, chuckled. He's so adorable. So, she left in the evening today for her dance class without helping out around the house again today? Ethan sighed as he looked around the mess in my house. Guessing from his response, it seemed he just found out about his wife attending dance classes. Seeing the state of the house, he must have realized that his wife really hadn't been helping out at all. Ethan bowed his head and apologized to me. It's not your fault, I rushed to say, but he shook his head. My wife herself said she would support you, Emily, but I'll see to it that she doesn't come here from tomorrow. And I understand my son may not be much of a help, but if there's anything you need, let me know anytime. Thank you so much," I responded gratefully. It seemed that Ethan was also worried about James's lack of interest in housework and childcare. For the first time in a long time, I felt the touch of kindness, and it brought tears to my eyes. About 3 months have passed since Ethan started visiting us. Thanks to him, Olivia has stopped coming to our house. My mood has been brighter ever since. I never knew I could feel this relieved just by her not coming. My son has even been able to hold up his hand now, and I've been able to spare a little more time for housework. "Oh, it's a mess again," I sighed as I spotted the state of my half-open James's room. Dirty shirts and socks were scattered all over the floor. I threw them into the laundry basket and decided to sweep the floor while I was at it. As I shoved the cleaning tool under the bed, I felt something was off. Did I hit something? As I maneuvered the cleaning tool, a clear file slid out, with a bank book inside. "Gosh, he's such a slob," I muttered. I picked up the bank book and set it on James's desk, and suddenly my breath hitched. I realized it was not James's bank book, but the one we'd set up for our son. Why was our son's bank book in James's room when I always kept it somewhere else? Currently, the only money in the account was the generous amount gifted from my parents and Ethan for the birth of our son. It was a considerable amount, saved for our son's future. A sense of dread crept over me as I tentatively opened the bank book. All the money in it was withdrawn. Out of impulse, I opened James's desk drawer and pulled out his bank book. Even though I knew I shouldn't, I couldn't stop myself. "Just as I thought," I muttered. Opening James's bank book, I found that the entire bonus he'd just received was withdrawn. Moreover, the remaining balance was too low. My mind went blank. Even as I heard my son crying in the distance, I was too stunned to rush to him as I usually would. A few hours later, when James came back from work, I confronted him. He was initially angry that I had entered his room and looked through his things, but eventually confessed. "I was financially helping my mother." "What? Why would you need to support your mother? And I can't believe you do something like this without telling me. You even dipped into our child's savings. This is not okay." James angrily thumped his desk as I confronted him. "Look, I only helped out 'cause my mom said she was struggling, okay? She's probably got problems we know nothing about. Besides, it's my hard-earned money. If you have so many complaints, maybe we should just get a divorce," he grumbled. Our son, who had been gently snoring in his crib, woke up and started crying. James argued with me and disturbed our son's sleep. I hurried over to him and lifted him up in my arms. "The money you earned?" "The money in the account was a generous gift from our parents. For our son, you can't claim it. Both your dad and my parents gifted us thinking about our son's future. Don't you feel guilty at all? And I'd appreciate it if you stopped mentioning divorce so thoughtlessly," I retorted. Watching our son, now cradled in my arms and calming down from his tears, James snorted with a look of annoyance. Then he presented a sheet of paper on the desk. It was a divorce paper, and his section was already filled out. I was shocked and my eyes widened in surprise. "I wouldn't mind getting a divorce any time, to be honest. But you wouldn't want to be struggling financially, burdened with a newborn baby," he said, seemingly thinking this would shut me up. My feelings started to recede at James's childish behavior. That's when I realized something. He had never once held our son. Seeing me silent, James laughed, almost as if he was certain of his upper hand. "So, from now on, please pay the living expenses from your own pocket," he added nonchalantly, tapping my shoulder before leaving the room. As the living room door closed, I sank to the floor, exhausted. Tears naturally flowed down my cheeks. My son, nestled in my arms, stretched out his little hand to me and giggled innocently. I had made up my mind. The next day, I submitted the paper he'd handed me to the city hall. Afterwards, I got on an Amtrak train. I left a note saying, "I'll submit the divorce papers and will be claiming alimony and reimbursement for the money you used, along with my wedding ring." I was concerned about taking our newborn baby outside, but he seemed intrigued by the new surroundings and was fortunately in a good mood. I braced myself to take extra care of his health. I was headed to my parents' house in Michigan. I only brought essentials for our son and a few of my valuables, so I didn't have much luggage. My parents, having been informed the previous night, were ready to welcome us. After hearing about James and his mother's actions, they were enraged. But they smiled kindly and suggested that I help them with their family business and raise my son here. My parents ran a fruit farm. It was a tough job, but I had helped out since I was a kid and had some experience and knowledge. I began to think that it might not be so bad. The next day, while I was enjoying a rare moment of relaxation, my phone rang. It was Olivia. Reluctantly, I answered the call.
"Emily, what the hell is this about?"
The moment I put the phone to my ear, a shrill scream pierced through. Somewhat irked, I replied, "Who are you?"
Huh?
Taken aback by my nonchalant response, Olivia stuttered. Feigning recollection, I exaggeratedly said, "Oh, is it you, Olivia? I'd completely forgotten about you since I've already divorced your son." My somewhat light-hearted reply seemed to shake her.
"Emily, do you realize what you've done? Acting so selfishly."
I assumed James had run to her, not expecting me to really go through with the divorce. It made sense that she was panicked enough to call. Selfish?
"I think the problem lies with your son, who presented me with a signed divorce agreement as a threat. Though it worked out just fine for me, I responded calmly."
She didn't seem to understand.
"I'll forgive you for this. Get married to my son. He's so upset, he's crying right now."
I wondered if he was still by her side. The image of James watching me talk on the phone with Olivia, tears welling up in his eyes, sent a chill down my spine. At the same time, I was utterly speechless at his determination to somehow get his mother to intervene.
"Enough is enough. I don't need a mama's boy for a James, or Olivia who spends her nights in male strip clubs." "Huh?"
Olivia choked on her words from the other end of the phone.
"How do you know that?"
It was clear she reacted to the mention of the gentlemen's club. This happened last night. After James left the living room, I pulled out my phone. One call was to my parents, to tell them I planned on divorcing and coming home. The other was to Ethan, to whom I owe gratitude and an apology, to explain the situation. That's when Ethan revealed everything to me. The reason Olivia had been practically living at our house was to visit a male strip club that opened at 6 p.m. There were various reasons she stayed at our place during the day, the first being our house was closer to the club than hers. Plus, by spending her days at our place, she could avoid chores at her own place. She also used me and our son as her excuse to get back home late. All this worked in Olivia's favor. Apparently, she had taken quite a fancy to one of the dancers at the club and had been spending a lot on him. It was hard to believe that Olivia, who had always been a homemaker, had any money of her own. And she couldn't even drink alcohol because of her low intolerance. She had been withdrawing money from the bank account Ethan maintained, buying drinks for the dancers, while sipping sodas herself. Ethan had been suspicious of Olivia after I asked about her. Despite being forbidden from coming to our house, Olivia continued to find reasons to go out for a while. Realizing something was off, he followed her and discovered she had been a regular at a strip club. He was deeply shocked to find out about her escapades and the misuse of his bank account.
To think she'd even take money from our son and grandson. If only I'd found out sooner. I am deeply sorry, Emily, and to my grandson as well.
The gravity of Ethan's guilt and apologies over the phone, having learned about our situation, was overwhelming.
You lied to James for money because she didn't have enough to lavish on those entertainers, didn't you?
Olivia remained silent at my accusation. I could hear James's voice over the phone saying,
"Mom, tell me that this is all a lie."
It seemed he had been listening after all. After a moment of silence, Olivia erupted in anger.
"Don't use such vulgar words like lavish. I'm just showing Chris my affection. He loves it when I visit him."
Chris must be her favorite dancer's name. I sighed at Olivia's pathetic outburst. The thought of my son's money being spent on her entertainment boiled my blood again.
"Neither Ethan nor I will let this slide. You better be ready, ma'am."
I ended the call and switched off my phone. A few days later, I received a call from James, who made a sincere apology about the misuse of money and his mother's actions. Regarding the divorce papers, he admitted that it was only on his mother's insistence, saying,
"If she bothers you, just show her the divorce papers. She'll stop bothering you."
And he wasn't serious about it. He was deeply regretful about being fooled by his mother, who he trusted unconditionally, and eventually driving us to divorce. He seemed to have finally woken up. "I'm truly sorry.
I've transferred $20,000 into your account as a token of my remorse, including the misused money and for the inconvenience caused. I hope this shows my sincerity. Let's start over and create a happy family. I need you, Emily, just as much as you need me."
His words made my skin crawl.
"Reconciliation is not an option. I only need my son. From now on, I'll need child support. We can discuss this further with our lawyers."
I knew that the $20,000 was the money Ethan had lent James. It was the money saved for his retirement, separate from the account Olivia had been spending from. From now on, James would have to work hard to repay his father and provide child support for our son. He'd also be under his father's surveillance. James, who believed I would be forgiving him, was in tears and apologizing, but it was too late. I said,
"Goodbye,"
ended the call, and promptly blocked his contact. 2 months have passed since the discussion with James, facilitated by our lawyers, was completed. Right now, I'm assisting at my parents' orchard, while also dedicating myself to child rearing. After my divorce from James, I've continued to keep in touch with Ethan. Sometimes, he comes over to see my son. Through conversations with Ethan, I learned that Olivia had secretly accrued debt. Ethan, who had secretly been preparing for divorce, showed no mercy and kicked Olivia out. Now it seems James reluctantly took in his mother and they're living together. Both James and his mother are forced to work to repay the debts and are living under extreme poverty. As I look into my son's innocent eyes, I'm determined to raise him so he doesn't end up like his father or Olivia.